It was an ordinary afternoon at a local grocery store. People wandered the aisles, focused on their shopping lists. The sound of carts rolling, occasional chatter, and the steady beep of checkout scanners filled the air. A young black man stood by the produce section, carefully selecting apples, completely unaware that his day was about to take an unexpected turn. Nearby, an older woman watched him. At first, her gaze might have seemed harmless, perhaps even curious, but there was something unsettling about its intensity. And then, without warning, her voice pierced the ordinary hum of the store. "Go back to Africa," she said, her words cutting through the air like a knife. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Shoppers froze in their tracks, their expressions a mix of shock and discomfort. For a moment, the store fell eerily silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Eyes turned toward the young man, waiting to see how he would respond to the blatant prejudice hurled at him in such an unexpected and public way. The grocery store was like any other on a typical weekday afternoon. Bright fluorescent lights illuminated the neatly arranged aisles, each one packed with everyday essentials. The air carried a faint mix of freshly baked bread and disinfectant, a scent so familiar it almost went unnoticed. Shoppers moved casually through the store, pushing carts and scanning shelves, their faces focused on finding the items on their lists. The occasional clink of jars and the rustling of plastic bags blended with the steady rhythm of checkout beeps in the background. It was a place where people came and went without much thought, just another stop in their daily routines. Among the crowd was a young black man in his late 20s, dressed simply in a hoodie and jeans. He stood near the produce section, examining a display of apples with quiet concentration, picking each one carefully before adding it to his cart. His demeanor was calm and ordinary, blending into the hum of the store like everyone else. A few feet away, an elderly woman stood by the canned goods aisle. She seemed unremarkable at first glance, her wiry frame clad in a modest cardigan, her shopping basket hanging from one arm. But there was something about the way she glanced toward the young man, brief, sharp looks that lingered just a bit too long. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like nothing, a passing curiosity, but her eyes, narrow and watchful, hinted at something far less benign. Their paths hadn't crossed yet, but the air between them seemed to carry an unspoken tension. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, as if the ordinary flow of the store had started to shift just slightly in a direction no one could anticipate. The store buzzed with the usual sounds of everyday life: shopping carts squeaking, the faint hum of a conversation nearby, the occasional laughter of a child. But then, cutting through all of it, came a voice that was sharp and deliberate, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Go back to Africa," the elderly woman said, her tone laced with disdain. For a moment it felt as though time itself had stopped. The words seemed to echo, hanging heavy in the air. Shoppers froze in their tracks, their eyes darting toward the source of the sound, and then to the young black man standing by the apples. His hand, mid-reach for another piece of fruit, paused. The atmosphere shifted instantly. What had been a mundane afternoon turned into something tense and deeply uncomfortable. The background noise of the store faded into a deafening silence, as if the building itself were holding its breath. People exchanged uncertain glances, their faces a mix of shock, confusion, and unease. Some stared openly at the woman, their expressions incredulous, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Others avoided looking altogether, their discomfort evident as they pretended to focus on their shopping. A few turned their gaze to the young man, their eyes filled with curiosity or sympathy, waiting to see how he would react to such a blatant act of hostility. The woman, meanwhile, stood firm, her expression cold and unyielding, as if daring anyone to challenge her. Her words had disrupted the fragile bubble of normalcy in the store, leaving everyone present to grapple with the weight of what had just happened. The young man stood there, his hand slowly lowering the apple back into the bin. The weight of the woman's words hung in the air, but he didn't flinch. His posture remained calm, his face composed, betraying no hint of anger or frustration. He took a steady breath, letting the tension simmer for just a moment before he spoke. With a measured and confident tone, he turned to the woman. "I could ask you the same question," he began, his voice steady but resolute. "Where do you come from? Because unless your ancestors were native to this land, they came from somewhere else, just like mine did." His words were like ripples in a still pond, calm yet powerful, touching everyone within earshot. But more importantly, he continued, "We're here now in this moment as equals. What matters is how we treat one another, not where our roots began." The man's gaze softened, but his words carried undeniable strength. "Hate divides us. Fear keeps us from seeing each other as human beings. And comments like yours," he paused briefly, "only deepen those divides. I won't carry hate in my heart for you, and I hope one day you won't carry it for me." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried a dignity and thoughtfulness that drew everyone in. The woman who had been so sure of her words a moment ago now seemed taken aback, her mouth opening slightly, as if to respond, but no words came. The bystanders, who had been frozen in silence, seemed to exhale as they absorbed the weight of his message. The air in the store shifted again, not back to the mundane, but to something quieter, heavier. The young man had spoken, and his words had left their mark. As the young man's words lingered in the air, the once heavy silence began to dissipate. The crowd, still rooted in place, slowly started to shift. The shock on their faces gave way to something different: admiration, respect, even a quiet sense of awe. It began with a single clap, hesitant, at first breaking the silence, like a crack of light in a dark room. Then another joined, and another, until a ripple of applause swept through the store. Heads nodded in quiet agreement, and a few voices murmured, "Well said," or "That's the truth." Some shoppers who moments ago had seemed unsure of how to react now stood tall, their gazes fixed on the young man with newfound respect. A middle-aged woman near the bread aisle called out, "Good for you," while an older man near the frozen section gave an approving thumbs up. Even those who had initially averted their eyes now looked at him differently, not with pity or discomfort, but with a sense of shared humanity. The tension that had gripped the store was replaced by a palpable feeling of unity, however brief, as if the young man's words had reminded everyone of a truth they'd forgotten: that respect and decency are universal. The elderly woman who had sparked the incident stood still, her earlier confidence now diminished. Her face betrayed a mix of surprise and uncertainty as she glanced around, realizing that she stood alone in her views. The young man, unshaken by the moment, simply gave a small nod of acknowledgement to those around him before turning back to his cart, ready to move on. The applause eventually faded, but the energy in the store remained different. People resumed their shopping, but their conversations were quieter, their interactions more thoughtful. The young man's calm and dignified response had not just silenced hate, it had reminded everyone present of the power of kindness and understanding to rise above it. The young man's response was more than just a reaction to a hateful comment, it was a lesson in grace, resilience, and the power of words to disarm ignorance. By choosing not to meet hostility with hostility, he turned a moment of prejudice into an opportunity for reflection, not just for the woman who had spoken, but for everyone who witnessed the exchange. His calm composure and thoughtful reply carried a message far greater than the setting. It showed that hate doesn't have to be met with anger. It reminded everyone that even in the face of cruelty, dignity and humanity can prevail. His words weren't just for the woman, they were a reminder to all of us about the importance of seeing beyond differences and treating each other with respect. Moments like these are a call to action. They challenge us to reflect on our own biases, to stand against racism whenever and wherever it appears, and to create spaces where everyone feels valued and respected. It's not always easy, and it might feel uncomfortable at times, but real change begins with simple acts of courage. To those watching, let this be a reminder: silence in the face of hate can be just as harmful as the hate itself. Stand up for what is right, whether it's speaking out against a harmful comment, showing support to someone targeted by prejudice, or educating yourself and others about the value of diversity. Each of us has the power to make a difference in our daily lives. It can start with a single kind word, a moment of understanding, or a refusal to let hate have the final say. Together, we can challenge the divisions and build a world where inclusivity and compassion are stronger than ignorance and fear. Let this story inspire you to be part of that change. This encounter in the grocery store was a stark reminder of how prejudice can surface in the most ordinary moments. It began with a hateful comment that could have escalated into something divisive, but instead it became a powerful lesson in grace and humanity. The young man's composed and thoughtful response didn't just silence the hate, it sparked reflection, admiration, and a shift in the atmosphere around him. His words served as a beacon of understanding, proving that dignity and kindness can disarm even the harshest of prejudices. In a world that can sometimes feel divided, his actions remind us of the profound impact of empathy and respect. When we choose to treat one another with humanity, we take a step closer to bridging those divides. It's a choice we can all make every day in every interaction. Let this story inspire you to stand up against hate and support inclusivity wherever you go. Together, we can create a world where respect and compassion are stronger than prejudice. If you found this video meaningful, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Thank you for watching, and let's keep spreading kindness and understanding. This story is a fictional account created to highlight the importance of empathy, respect, and standing against prejudice.